Oh, hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to what is now a daily show, Rebel Roundup, wherein we talk about the news of the world and of the day, completely unscripted. I'm your general host, Sheila Gunreid, although that will vary from day to day, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Tamara Ugolini, out in Ontario. Tamara, how's it going?
Pretty good, Sheila. I'm kind of starting to feel a little bit of spring maybe in the air, which is
No.
probably terrible to say with with you and your minus 40 bus cancellations and
Again today.
battery. Oh, really? Oh, no. Yeah. But I mean, I'm sure it's short-lived because I think the groundhog saw his shadow, or maybe I have it reversed. So we're in for another 6 weeks of winter, apparently, according to some random groundhog. But otherwise, everything is good, minus the fact that we're still being trolled heavily by the Trump administration with threats of the 51st state and tariffs incoming. Um, I am I'm really starting to think that Trump, or I've already been thinking this, but it's really starting to solidify my thoughts that Trump is pulling everyone's leg and just seeing how far he can take things, and perhaps maybe even laughing at the media and the frenzy that takes place every time he makes these sorts of announcements.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that on the show today. Trump has
Yes.
made even more comments, and I think he takes great pleasure, as he should, in driving all of the establishment elite absolutely bonkers every time he opens his mouth. It makes me very happy. I'm sure it makes him very happy too. And it sort of belies this, especially here in Canada, this like, oh, Team Canada approach. And we're in Alberta, like, we've been asking you people to let us build pipelines across Team Canada for a very long time because we want to give you wealth and jobs. But that was all for naught until somebody threatened Doug Ford with tariffs on the auto and steel industries. Then it's like, oh, okay, we're all in this together, are we? If I ever hear that again, I'm going to puke. But I should tell everybody what we're doing here, and we'll get into that because we've got a lot of clips on that Trump making comments. This is, as I said, the Rebel News daily roundup, you guys. So every day at 11 a.m. Mountain or 1 in the center of the universe in Toronto, we'll go live for about an hour and a half. We're going to talk about things that are happening in the world, and there's more news than ever as we are continuing to circle the drain of tariff mania. So if you want to get involved in the show and you are still watching us on the censorship platform of YouTube, might I suggest you make an alternative decision about where you plant your viewership. If you want to support the work that we do completely willingly out of the goodness of your heart, and support a platform that doesn't care about your opinion. I think that's the best way. I don't want a platform to be conservative or progressive. I just want them to leave me alone to consume the news and opinions however I want, and then come to my own opinions, which is what it used to be like in the digital public square. Head on over to Rumble. Rumble, as I said, is a free speech platform, but they also let you support us in the form of a Rumble rant. That's their version of YouTube's super chat. And every little bit helps. But if you are making a super chat over the $5 US cutoff, I'm obligating myself and my friend Tamara to read it and address it on air. But don't let that be the bar for entry. I say this every time. We will do our best to take the time to address any of the chats that come under that $5 US cutoff, but I'm not making any guarantees. If we come up against a hard stop, I'm sorry, we just can't get to them, but we will get to the $5 and over one. So those are the rules. Get chatting, get talking. If you feel so inclined, support the work that we're doing. And let's get into, well, yesterday was the Super Bowl. I didn't watch the Super Bowl. I'm not interested in American football at all. I don't see what the hype is. I like the commercials and stuff, but I don't know why it's so exciting. But before the Super Bowl, Trump did a pre-Super Bowl interview with Fox News, and he was saying some 51st statey things, which upset all the fancy people again.
You announced tariffs on Canada and Mexico. You immediately got action from both of them on border security and drug interdiction.
I did. A lot of
Is
action
that good
that nobody
enough?
expected.
Is that good enough?
No, it's not good enough.
So more needed in 30 days.
Something has to happen. It's not sustainable, and I'm changing it.
You know, the Prime Minister said this weekend to a group of Canadian businessmen, he was a private meeting, he said that your wish for Canada to be the 51st state is a, quote, real thing. Is it a real thing?
Yeah, it is. I think Canada would be much better off being a 51st state because we lose $200 billion a year with Canada, and I'm not going to let that happen. It's too much. Why are we paying $200 billion a year essentially in subsidy to Canada? Now, if they're a 51st state, I don't mind doing it.
Yeah, I think we've chatted about that before, that it's not really a subsidy when this is just your trade partnership agreement. But I think that Canadians and the media is being whipped up into this frenzy about this 51st state. I mean, logically, I think about the 51st state thing as just our vast amount of land mass and how that would look as a 51st state. It wouldn't, I don't think it could work that way. If we want to have a conversation about it, and I've mentioned before on the live streams and in some reports, I think that I'm willing to have that conversation because at this point, Canada is just a dumpster fire of social, political, economic happenings. It's been mismanaged for the better part of 10 years. We really have nothing in our favor. If someone like Trump and the US wanted to economically devastate us, I think it would be very clearly, very easily to do that. But I don't think taking just Canada as this land mass and covering it over with an American flag and calling it the 51st state would logically make very much sense. I think that Trump is trolling so hard and laughing on the inside at how much traction it's getting and how much it's whipping up the likes of Justin Trudeau and his potential successors and seeing how far he can push it. Like I said, I'm here for a conversation, but I think that he's just doing it to troll, really, like the peak troll that we've ever seen.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, you're right. Even if the Americans took us over, it still doesn't address the problems of cultural incompatibility between certain parts of this country. Like, you might be the 51st state over there. If we wanted to think seriously about it, maybe BC needs to be California North or Washington North. But again, it just points to the fact that, like, look, if we're so demoralized, our culture is so broken, our economy is so stagnant, and our military is so decrepit that anybody could take us over if they wanted to. And if it weren't for the friendliness of our neighbor to the south and their constant protection of us, literally, we are just sitting ducks here under Justin Trudeau. And we should do well to remember that when we talk about our American friends. But as Danielle Smith points out, once you take oil and gas out of the equation, Canadians buy more from the United States than they buy from us. And we should also remind our American friends that we actually sell oil and gas to you at such a reduced rate that you cannot produce it for what we're selling it to you for. And your refineries are equipped to take Canadian heavy oil and gas. So if you don't want our oil and gas, that's fine. But your heavy oil field in Utah is not ready to go and not nearly at capacity. And the other option is Venezuela. So I don't think you want to support a dictatorship in Venezuela, a socialist dictatorship where they eat the zoo animals out of starvation. I'm pretty sure you don't want their heavy oil. You might want friendly Canadian heavy oil from the great province of Alberta with our conservative premier who's fighting for our jobs, but she's also fighting for your jobs too, because if you got to idle down those refineries, you're in a world of trouble. Those are American jobs that won't be working. So, and I think Trump recognizes that, which is why he only threatened to tariff Canadian oil and gas 10% to make it look like he was doing something. And I think that is through the hard work of our Premier Danielle Smith. And by the way, I see after my incessant complaints in the live stream, guess who's going to Washington to make the case for Saskatchewan? Yes, it's Scott Moe. I complained and I whined and I moaned and I said, why didn't he do what Danielle Smith did? And now he's going. So hopefully he can stave off some tariffs on Saskatchewan potash, make the case for American farmers who rely on Canadian potash, because the alternative is, of course, Russia and some of the other world's worst places. So there's that. But as Trump said, the threat of tariffs is not going away. And he promises 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from Canada. So we've got Doug Ford losing his marbles again because he didn't go and talk to the Americans. He talked about them, didn't talk to them. And Legault, who's like, maybe we need a pipeline, maybe we don't. Now he's mad too. So I don't know. Why didn't your premier just go talk to Trump? I don't know.
A little diplomacy goes a long way. That's Team Canada, right? They're part of this agreement, interprovincial federal agreement, as though they're advocating and uniting under this renewed umbrella of Team Canada. And as you said, Sheila, we're all in it together. And remember, the government has your back. And now this is like renewed COVID talking points 2.0.
Yeah.
And then you have premiers like Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, who are actually being reasonable, logical diplomats in all of this chaos and mayhem. And they've left this, quote unquote, Team Canada approach, the same approach that decimated small businesses across the country with COVID lockdowns, didn't advocate for them, but rather implemented legislation to kill them, saw the largest wealth transfer of our time from the private sector to the public sector throughout all of that. And this is the Team Canada that was responsible for all of those measures that decimated our small business sector, decimated the livelihoods of Canadians, pushed out innovation, entrepreneurship, ownership, and bloated the private or the public sector at 3 times the rate of the private. And now we have this perpetually bloated bureaucracy that can't even function, doesn't even do any sort of good for the Canadian people. So when Trump talks about this 51st state staff and Canada would do well being a 51st state, I'm here for the Doge. I want to see a Department of Government efficiency, because I see the bloat, I see the ineptitude, I see the lack of accountability, the lack of transparency, the waste. I mean, you've just launched that campaign, Sheila, highlighting the global affairs squanderings like they've done with USAID. And if that's the things that start to shift and change in Canada, if we have those discussions, then 100% I'm here for it.
Yeah. Thanks for mentioning Expose the Waste. It's exposethewaste.com. All of us at Rebel News are sort of picking off some of the stories of just the Liberal government ridiculous DEI waste and legacy projects that are just bananas. Like, for example, the story that I did today, it's not one of the larger known stories, but it's so like chef's kiss, perfectly liberal. The Liberals gave $50,000 through Global Affairs for some reason to a photography exhibit done by multi-millionaire rock singer Bryan Adams. For those of you who don't remember, Bryan Adams terrorized our ears for 18 weeks straight in 1991 because his song was featured prominently on the soundtrack of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Everything I do it for you. And everywhere you went, that's all you could hear. I'll never forgive him for that. But that is not my dislike of this project. He's a rich dude. Why are we giving him $50,000 to feature his hobby of photography? Well, I'll tell you why. Because guess who was in it as one of the prominent Canadians featured? Justin Trudeau, doing his signature like with his sleeves rolled up, because that's how he thinks people who do actual things for a living, how they dress. So they spent $50,000 giving a multi-millionaire rock singer money to work on his little side hobby. And the only reason they did it is because Justin Trudeau was prominently featured as one of the people photographed. And just, that's what you do. When you're like, do I buy the 2-liter jug of milk or the 4-liter jug of milk because Justin Trudeau is taxing me to death? This is what he's doing with your money. So anyways, it's exposethewaste.com. If you're on X, keep tweeting out those crazy stories, and who knows, you might just see a Rebel News journalist pick one of them off and include it in the garbage pile of stories from the Justin Trudeau Liberals.
The dumpster fire that is the Canadian government's bureaucratic bloated waste, where we need a Doge, bring Doge to Canada, make government accountable again, is what I'm saying. And I mean, here in Canada, we have our leader of the official opposition, conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, who seems to be becoming more and more conservative as time goes on.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, he's slowly getting there, I think, in some areas more than others. But he warns ahead of these re-threatened tariffs that Liberal frontrunner Mark Carney, who has been Justin Trudeau's behind-the-scenes right-hand man for the last few years as his financial and economic advisor. And,
like all the
bad
things. Sorry to interrupt, but like all the bad things that we lived through over the last 5 years, the COVID overspending, the bailout programs, the inflationary spending, the size and scope and bloat of government, the blocked pipelines, the DEI nonsense. Guess who that was? That was Mark Carney, because Justin Trudeau's brain is like an empty bucket. And all you just do is pour bad ideas into it. Like, here's the World Economic Forum with their buckets of water carried by Chrystia Freeland, and Mark Carney poured into his empty brain, and then he pukes it out on the rest of us. Anyways,
he's an actor. He's a drama teacher. He's the perfect person to have these bad ideas and then act them out on the global stage front and center, because that is his only skill, is drama and acting. And so we have Mark Carney, who is vying for Liberal leadership with former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, who was kind of the front person, but Mark Carney, who claimed he was an outsider, which is so incredibly laughable because he's been nothing but an insider for the last few decades, and especially, as you said, the last half of a decade. But Poilievre is calling them out because this carbon tax on steel production will just completely decimate Canadian steel, ahead of also Trump threatening to target that industry.
We need to do away with Mr. Carney's carbon tax. This is another thing. Carney told CTV about 10 days ago he's going to bring in a new carbon tax on Canadian industry. He mentioned steel. Can you imagine what it would do to our country if at the same time Donald Trump hits our steel industry with a tariff, Mark Carney brings in a massive new carbon tax? My friends, there will be no steel making in Canada, and we will lose the most fundamental strategic building block of an economy and, frankly, our national security. These radical policies have not worked in the last 9 years, and they will be a catastrophe if they are allowed to continue for a fourth term of the Carney-Trudeau Liberals. That's why we need a strong, Canada first, common sense, conservative government that will, yes, axe taxes, build homes, fix budgets, and stop crime, that will bring home production and paychecks by repealing anti-energy laws, that will build pipelines, unapologetically build pipelines, dig mines, LNG liquefaction plants, that will pass a bring-it-home tax cut to bring back the $500 billion that the Carney-Trudeau Liberals have given to the Americans. We will take back control of our borders with more border guards. We will cut foreign aid in order to rebuild our military, reclaim our north, put Canadians back in charge of their lives in the freest nation on earth. Canada first, Canada here, Canada now, Canada forever. Let's bring it home.
You know, I think that's the first time I've heard him say that he's going to cut foreign aid.
Yeah, I think that was the very first time. As he was talking there, I was like, man, he looks cold. Wonder what the temperature is in Iqaluit, because you can tell. I know that feeling. Like, if you're from Alberta, you know it, especially if you've had to try to film outside when it's this cold. Your face starts to actually freeze up and your lips don't work properly. So it's sort of like you're drunk, or you have like cotton in your mouth where you can't really talk because nothing is working. Like the lower or your outer extremities on your lips, they just don't work. And I was like, man, what is the temperature in Iqaluit today? Minus 21. I was like, oh, dang, it's warmer in Iqaluit than it is here today. So I'm just safely in my basement with my space heater. But he mentioned LNG there. And Trump just struck a big deal with Japan to sell them LNG. Now, Justin Trudeau has said that there was no business case to sell countries like Germany and Japan liquefied natural gas. It's like billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars that they want to buy from us. Huge projects. And he has just not bothered to push them forward. He's put up regulatory hurdles so that they can't get done. And just as recently as, I think it was 2 months ago, I did a story on it, because what was notable to me was that Trump met with Japan's prime minister, Trudeau met with Japan's prime minister. And on the Japanese readout of the meeting, they said they brought forward the issue of buying LNG one more time. I think that's the third or fourth time they've brought it up with Trudeau. But it was conveniently left off the Canadian readout of the same meeting. So Trudeau is trying to bury the fact that these countries keep coming to Canada and saying, we would very much like to buy your liquefied natural. I think Elon let me down.
I think I'm frozen, Sheila. It's not you, it's me.
Oh, okay. I thought Elon let me down. Yeah, so it's been years and years that these countries have been asking us for liquefied natural gas. And now that Trump's in power, he says, fine, if Canada won't sell it to you, we're here for you. And I hope it's not too late for us. That's all.
Yeah, well, and I mean, the 51st state threats show that we have to start taking things like that very seriously, because if there were to be a threat of invasion, I mean, we already kind of have that happening here at home. We have Chinese interference in our parliamentary affairs that we don't know the full scope and breadth of that, which parliamentarians have been compromised by foreign interference and meddling in our institutions, in our democracy, in our elections. I guess we have to kind of be a little bit careful what we say here on YouTube, since we are trying to potentially be remonetized. And election misinformation happens to be one of the sacred covenants that you cannot discuss on the YouTube censorious platform. But and then of course we have the India issue, China issue, and then the threats of foreign nations. And our military is too preoccupied with DEI nonsense to hire people based on actual merit. I'm pretty sure that our military capacity is absolutely abysmal, combined with the fact that most of our equipment is rusted out, old, and decrepit. So every which way that you look at Canada right now, which I hope Trump is trolling, because if he were serious, I mean, you look at the state of affairs, it wouldn't be overly difficult. And I don't want to give any ideas. But Poilievre is taking a hard stance against all of this. And he has said that President Trump is wrong. We will never be a 51st state. And I think this was a tweet that he put out where he said also Canada is and always will be a proud, sovereign, independent nation. And that's how I'd like it to be. I think that we should, maintain that diplomacy, have those discussions. How can we lean on what our US counterparts are doing, overhauling the bureaucracy, bringing back accountability, cutting that bureaucratic waste, and serving Canadians first. And as they're doing in America, serving Americans first, putting them first, rebuilding their strength and security on that global scale, but also obviously by building that and starting that at home. I think Canada would do well to follow closely in those footsteps. And that's the conversation that I'm here for. I think we should maybe just cut to an ad break, Sheila, or do we have a Rumble ad read that's ready to go yet? I don't see one here.
I don't see one yet. I was just going to touch on, I don't know why I Googled Warren Kinsella's name. Oh, yes. This idea that, there's, let me just go back a bit. So Warren Kinsella, he is a liberal strategist who was hired, if I recall correctly, in 2019. I'm trying to remember who hired him. The Daisy Group, which is Warren Kinsella's operation. Anyways, they were hired to go after the PPC and call them a bunch of haters. So never forget that. But he the other day tweeted something along the lines of, who would take up arms to defend Canada? He's a liberal strategist. Now, this is where the liberals are on Team Canada. You're taking my guns away because you don't think I have a right to defend myself with them, and you want to send them to Ukraine so that the Ukrainians can defend themselves against Russians with my guns. But I'm not, I don't have a right to self-defense in Canada, except now the liberals say I have a right to self-defense if only I take up arms against the Americans. I don't know if you guys saw that. It's going to be hard to find on X because Warren Kinsella has like literally everybody under the sun blocked. But it's just interesting to see how the liberals and the liberal brain trust are sort of all over the place on this issue. It's Team Canada, except when it comes to Alberta. Don't use guns, except when it comes to the Americans. And by the way, do you think the threat of killing Americans is going to go very far when you have a liberal strategist saying that in the middle of tariff negotiations? Like, it seems a little bit crazy. Like, it's just mental. And just to, because I know we have the time, while we wait on a Rumble ad to come. Oh, we've got one now. The idea that sticking a carbon tariff on upstream manufacturing, oil and gas, steel production, concrete production, somehow doesn't hurt the consumer, that all gets passed along. And that was Mark Carney's idea was, well, we'll just take it off the consumer stuff and we'll put it all upstream. We'll put it on the big companies. Well, that does two things, three things, kills jobs, deters investment in this country, and then adds increased costs of manufacturing, which touches on everything that you buy, move, sell, trade, and do in this country. But I was watching from as late as, I think it was June, Mark Carney's parliamentary appearances at Senate Committee on Banking, when he was trying to push forward this banking bill that thankfully died when the Liberals prorogued Parliament that would enforce DEI, enforce it on banks. Now banks do it just because they're woke, but it would enforce it even on like credit unions and stuff. Like, so if you try to escape the big banks and go to a local credit union that isn't woke, they were going to impose this on the Canadian financial sector. And Mark Carney was there testifying to the importance of it. And he was asked, like, do you support the carbon tax, Justin Trudeau's carbon tax? And he's like, I support things that work. And so like they asked him like 3 times and he would take like 3 minutes and he never said yes or no. So I think he would probably say, I don't support Justin Trudeau's carbon tax, but I support my carbon tax.
Exactly. Spoken like a true Liberal who never actually answers the question, but takes an insanely long time and mental gymnastics to blurt out some sort of word salad.
Yeah. By the way, Warren Kinsella calls people who are not explicitly against Donald Trump. He calls them Vichy Canadians, as in the Vichy France collaborators with the Nazis. Again, going a long way in those trade negotiations when you have a longstanding part of the Liberal brain trust making these sort of comments, calling Trump the Mango Mussolini because he thinks he's so clever, and Canadians who are pro-Trump, I guess pro-gun rights, pro-oil and gas, pro-free speech, we're just like Nazi collaborators. Good call, buddy. You know who that does favors to? The actual Nazis, because it makes just free speech conservatives who think that Trudeau is doing a bad job in trade negotiations, it makes us akin to the worst creatures that ever walked the face of the earth. Good job. Good job, Liberals. Not seeming crazy or anything there. We've got a read from Truth Social. Olivia, do we have a Rebel News ad read after this, or a Rebel News ad after this? Okay, we'll hit an ad after that. This one is from Truth Social. So if you want to get maybe what Donald Trump is actually saying instead of what the Liberal Brain Trust says Donald Trump is actually saying, might I suggest you visit Truth Social directly. If you're looking for a great place online for news, discussion, and entertainment, then check out Truth Social, Donald Trump's social media website. You'll get breaking news stories and commentary from top media figures. If you want to see Trump's legendary Truth Social post, then get on Truth Social today. Join a growing community of patriots on a free speech platform designed to avoid censorship and cancellation by big tech. Make your voice heard. Join the movement. Join Truth Social. Okay. By the way, Warren Kinsella's little his poll, would you take up arms to defend Canada? It didn't go the way he thought. That's what you get, dummy. You take their guns and then you ask your Liberals, the Liberals, the anti-gun Liberals, if they're going to take up arms to defend Canada. The answer is no. They wouldn't take up arms to defend themselves, and they won't let you to do it either. But anyways, careful what you ask. You might not like the answer. Anyway, let's hit an ad break and then we'll come back into more.
Canadians know the national anthem. They stand in silence to remember those who died for this country. But not every Canadian knows their rights and freedoms. The Freedom Passport will change that. It looks and feels like a Canadian passport, but contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in a portable, easy-to-read format. The Freedom Passport. Order one for yourself and for all the freedom lovers that you love at freedompassport.ca.
Oh, hi, it's Ezra Levant here in Toronto with an important message because we need your help. Independent journalism in Canada is under attack. Government censors, big tech deplatformers, and the dying legacy media are all working together to maintain exclusive control on the information you receive. They don't want you to hear other voices like ours, and they really don't want you to be informed and to think for yourself. That's why the work we do here at Rebel News is so important. Our on-the-ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. Members get instant access to all of our shows, invitations to exclusive events, and access to our premium content like live event footage and documentaries you won't see anywhere else. Only Rebel News Plus members can join the conversation by participating in the comments section of our new website. That way you can have your say too. More than anything, though, you'll be able to take pride in supporting real, honest journalism, and you'll help our talented team continue to do the work to push back on the establishment. We really can use your help. We need it, in fact. So thank you, and enjoy Rebel News Plus.
All
That's
right.
the ad we all know and love.
I was when he says like, "Oh hi, Ezra Levant," I almost say hi back because that's how he calls you. Like when he answers the phone, it's like, "Oh hi," and I started saying it back to him, and he just realized that I started doing it. Like I answer the phone exactly how he does whenever he calls, and he has only just now figured it out. All right, so let's go to, and we can pop ahead to a few things. Trump. Here, yeah, without the US, Canada doesn't really have a country. I think this makes the point that I was sort of making earlier that we would do well to remember the friendship of the Americans in just not waltzing in and taking the place because they could.
Of Canada, if this should happen, I don't know how they can do it without us, because without the US, Canada really doesn't have a country. They do almost all of their business with us. And if we say we want our cars to be made in Detroit, with a stroke of a pen, I can do that. And other things in addition to that would not allow Canada to be a viable country.
Mr. President, you're going to honor first responders today.
I don't know that we do most of our business with, I mean, we're a close ally and trade partner, but I think I was looking it up last week. I thought it was only like 20% of our GDP was trade with the US. Maybe I had that wrong.
I think that also takes into account internal business, like our GDP with each other. Like I think it's very clear that they are our single largest export partner. Now, the thing I wanted to talk about, because being from the oil and gas sector, I might know a little bit about this, but let's just go to Trudeau saying nothing to reporters as he returns to his hotel. Usually he can't shut up when he sees a camera around, but things aren't good. And now every time he opens his mouth, he says something stupid about Donald Trump. So maybe he's taking some advice and shutting up. I don't know. Let's see.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau. Avez-vous une réaction sur les nouveaux tarifs que M. Trump voudrait impliquer? M. Trudeau?
Is Canada a viable country?
Is Canada a viable country?
Who asks that?
I wonder how the mainstream media feels being shunned by Trudeau, like how we're repeatedly treated by him out in the field and in his own leadership debate Q&A period.
Yeah. That's odd for Trudeau, because I think that was foreign media there. He loves to talk to the foreign media. He fancies himself to be a darling to the foreign media. And now they're just shouting questions at him like the rambunctious rebels instead of him stopping to show off his socks as he gets out of the limo.
He's in Paris right now for the Artificial Intelligence Summit. I mean, something artificial intelligence, if we're all here for that discussion, how and why can that summit not be attended by Zoom, right? This is another case in point where Justin Trudeau, who lectures everybody on their carbon footprint and has implemented a sweeping indiscriminate carbon tax on Canadians, is globetrotting every which way to attend these globalist summits. And this time it's on artificial intelligence. So I think this could easily have just been done on Zoom. But of course, it's the backdoor deals, the backdoor meetings and discussions and the schmoozing and the partying that you just can't miss out on when you're trying to tell everybody else that you can't take a summer vacation because as was it Mark Holland who just became unhinged in Parliament last year, telling everyone who was going to take a week-long family vacation with their kids that they were going to burn the planet if they drove or God forbid flew a plane to get there.
Right. And then Justin Trudeau, when he's announcing his response to the tariffs, saying, cancel your vacations to the United States and take a family road trip in Canada. And it's like, excuse me, Mark Holland lost his marbles telling me that I would spell the end of the earth as we know it if I drove around in my SUV a little bit too much. Now that's the patriotic thing to do. Which one am I supposed to do? Like, if you were just a mindless liberal, you would not know what to do with yourself because you would be looking at the liberals for advice about how best to live your life. And you're like, do I listen to Mark Holland in the summer or do I listen to Justin Trudeau right now? And by the way, why is Justin Trudeau at this AI conference? He resigned. He has no business being there. If you are just the placekeeper until the liberals select the new prime minister, without allowing Canadians to vote on it, then why are you in Paris except to have a big howdy-do with your globalist friends one last time on our dime?
A schmooze fest. Yeah, it's like sit down, take a back seat, let the real adults take over. But here he has some weird comments apparently from the AI conference where he gave a little speech. Hooray for Trudeau.
Do we have
Governments,
that?
The private sector, and civil society need to think responsibly about how AI is shaping the world. We cannot let AI pollute social media with empty slop and cunning disinformation. We cannot let it grow even more the rifts within us, rifts that are already so deep between the haves, the have-nots, and the have-yachts.
Oh, like him.
We cannot let it drive our citizens further towards cynicism, populism, hopelessness, and hatred. AI could unleash the potential of every human being to contribute, to create, to positively impact the world around us, but only if we choose to shape it that way.
Oh my goodness. It sounds like he's just paving the way to also put algorithm and censorship stipulations onto AI because God forbid we have it generate some things that are grounded in logic and reasoning and free expression and free speech.
Or just
what do you call it? The slop?
The slop. He called it slop. And by that, he probably means
empty slop.
Those fun AI generated cartoons of Freeland and Carney and Trudeau. I don't know if you've seen those. They're sort of poking around on X. I forget who makes them. But they're pretty funny because they dump their voices and it's obviously not like you can tell that it's dubbed. And by the way, it's not real because it's a cartoon. And they have these little cartoons that make fun of Justin Trudeau and the Liberal leadership race. So yeah, of course, somebody as vain and ridiculous as Justin Trudeau would find that to be slop instead of just the peasants making fun of the king, which would really irritate the king. I want to talk about this thing from the unions.
Yes.
Because CUPE is asking the feds to nationalize countries or companies that threaten to leave Canada for the United States. And of course, they've got True North has the image of the raised fist of communism from CUPE, which is so on the nose. The Canadian Union of Public Employees has called on the federal government to assert public ownership. You mean forcibly nationalize companies in Canadian markets and spend tax dollars to fight back against Trump's imperialism. This is actual communism. When you just take over a company and you claim it is in the public good. If the government can do this to you, why would you ever start a company in Canada? If one day the government can declare, Actually, we don't like what you're doing with your company. It's ours now. This is how you scare away investment from Canada forever. This is what the Soviets did. This is what they did to the kulaks. They took their lands. Because they were farmers that were doing well. They weren't just peasants who owned nothing. These were the middle class. This is how you kill the middle class, by stopping their upwardly mobile ambitions through the threat of communism. But this is also exactly what they did in Venezuela with the oil and gas companies. So Venezuela, you would think that it could be like Dubai, right? It should be. It has the world's largest proven reserves of oil and gas, heavy oil that hell wouldn't have there. And yet they are so poor that the people, as I said off the top of the show, are eating the zoo animals out of starvation. Their healthcare system is third world at best. And the people are poor, and what little wealth there is concentrated in the government class. Sound familiar? And that's because they just started nationalizing companies in the government's interest. And so what happens? Companies who would do business there just leave because they're like, we're not going to be next. Thank you very much. And also because you have government bureaucrats running oil and gas companies, they don't succeed. They don't do well. Case in point, in Canada, I'll point you to the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, a $5 billion private sector project that all the government had to do was get out of the way and enforce the law. And then all of a sudden, it's a $35 billion, 7 times over budget public sector boondoggle, way over budget, way over the time frame to be built, and now they don't know what to do with it. Yes, oil is flowing, but this could have been done for 7 times less and not cost the Canadian taxpayer a dime, and now we're stuck with it. And that's just one government-run project that should have stayed in the private sector. Imagine now if the government followed QP's advice and was like, oh, Magna, you're trying to go to move your factories for auto parts into the United States. You belong to us now. Can you imagine how much it would cost to just go and buy a jobber part off the shelf in Canadian Tire to fix your car? Like, it would be something, a part that costs $2 would cost $40 because you had to pay government wages to make it. I mean, it would just be an absolute disaster. And it's like the socialist unions pretend that what happened in Venezuela doesn't exist at all.
Yeah, you'd have to turn a blind eye. And we say nationalizing, but really it's seizing, right? This is asking the government to come in and seize private businesses just because they are considering relocating to the US, because Donald Trump is going to help innovation and help growth and get the economy up and moving and running efficiently and effectively. I mean, this is full on communism talk. I mean, but QP is arguably
full on communism.
One of the most, full of communists, clearly, but also one of the most entitled unions in the country. They benefit from taxpayer dollars, right? They're federal workers. And so, of course, they want the government to come in and seize businesses while turning a blind eye to Ottawa's failures and to even manage its own programs. The government has done nothing but mismanage the country for 10 years. And you can see that unfolding in the streets right now. I don't understand. They obviously live in this little federal government worker bubble. And what they're doing is just trying to get their more taxpayer money, have no results, even less accountability, and protect their own jobs and protect their union power at any cost.
Yeah, like imagine the problems and wait times and spending that you see in the Canadian healthcare system. Now, take all those problems and plunk them dead center into any supply chain off the top of your head. Food, auto parts, manufacturing, oil and gas, the wait times, the delays, the spending, the bureaucrats, the have you just tried dying instead of getting what you need? Ethos. Yeah, imagine that. Just take it from the healthcare system and apply it to the entire Canadian economy. That's what QP wants to do. Do you think that's a good idea? I don't. Let us know in the chat.
Yeah, we do have one here from AMT60. Thank you very much. Gives $5. says AI will lead to total imprisonment with 15-minute cities like the Chinese social credit score. You speak against the gov, then your bank account gets shut down, can't buy gas, food, or public transit. Or I would say add that medical treatment. China. I mean, this isn't, we don't need AI to lead us there. We've already seen that happen. We're
there. Ask the Freedom Convoy.
The Liberals invoked the Emergencies Act without a clear definition or reasonable grounds to, in terms of an actual tangible evidence-based national security threat. They invoked it because they were embarrassed by the impact the blockades and the protests were having on ports of entry with our largest ally and trade partner, the US. Biden was phoning up Trudeau saying, hey, what's going on at the borders? It's looking really bad. What are you doing about this situation? So the US was actually pressuring the Liberal government to take action and disband these protests because it was embarrassing them. So we want to talk about foreign interference. Here's another little tidbit of things that were happening on the political scale throughout the Freedom Convoy. And this was all discussed last week during the appeal. The Trudeau Liberals have appealed Justice Mosley's January 2024 decision that the invocation of the Emergencies Act was unreasonable and therefore infringed on the constitutional rights of the protesters and of Canadians, and specifically and especially the freezing of protesters' bank accounts. And there was two named applicants or defendants in the case. Edward Cornell, who's a decorated war veteran, spent decades serving our country, defending the right to assembly, the right to freedom of expression. And then also dedicated police officer Vincent Gerses, who we've featured on the platform a few different times about various subjects, mostly to do with, again, free expression, the right to assemble, and civil liberties. And both of these gentlemen had their bank accounts frozen and seized by the government without any legislative oversight, without any appeal process in place to say, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? They were told, well, if you have a problem with it, go call, Susie at TD Bank in Brampton. Is exactly pretty much verbatim what the one defense lawyer, I can't remember, Blair Ector, said to the justices last week. And that is not good enough for such sweeping and overreaching and heavy-handed abuse of power by the government onto its own citizens who worked in the forces to defend the rights and freedoms of Canadians for dedicated and decorated careers. So anyway, getting back to this comment, I don't think we need to lead anywhere into this because we've already seen it happen. We've seen how easily it can happen. And even when our justice system shows a twinkle of hope that they're going to get it right and rule against these kinds of actions, the government will use our own money to appeal it and fight against the ruling, as the Liberals are doing now. I expect the decision will come in, the coming weeks or months, but the justices didn't specify when they would have the decision on whether or not this appeal will be successful. So we've seen it happen. We don't need AI because the Liberals are doing a great job at it already.
Yeah, and I should remind everybody that the banks, there was zero pushback from the banks.
Yes.
And they were just like, oh, you have a hacked list, federal government? The federal government did not come into how they froze the bank accounts with clean hands, by the way. So even if they thought which they didn't, because they were advised by CSIS, they did not meet the standard to invoke the Emergencies Act. They disregarded CSIS's advice and invoked it anyway. And they didn't seek any outside advice, by the way. That came out in the first day of the 2-day hearing that Tamara covered the second part of. But the banks did not push back. So Finance Canada, or FinTrack at the time, who their main role is to find the proceeds of crime, they had a hacked list of the names of the people who donated to the Freedom Convoy. So this came to the federal government through an illegal act. The federal government then gave that list to the banks and said, freeze their bank accounts. And you know what the banks said? Sure. They didn't say, whoa, how did you get this list? By what standard are you expecting us to freeze the bank accounts of our customers, or for how long do you anticipate we should freeze this? Because as one of the Chief Justices pointed out, because the federal government keeps saying, oh, it was a freeze on the bank accounts, not a seize. And the Chief Justice said, in the end, it doesn't matter, because the impact on the person is still the same, and the psychological terror on the person is still the same. So whether you frozen their bank account for an indeterminate amount of time, or you have taken their money, they still do not have the ability to access their money. And you and they did not know how long it would last. So to the point of your, like, we need AI, or we don't need AI, or we should avoid AI because it will bring in social credit, it's already here, and your banks are not prickling against it. They're going along with it already. So my advice is maybe seek out a good credit union.
And the whole intention behind the seizing of bank accounts was to disperse and get everyone out of Ottawa. But it was really funny, the lawyers, when they were defending the original applicants, as I mentioned, Gersies and Cornell, stated that it worked to do the opposite, because in the case of Edward Cornell, he was residing in New Brunswick. He was hundreds of kilometers away from his home. He didn't have any cash on him. He had no way to buy gas, buy food, get shelter. He actually could not leave the downtown core of Ottawa because he didn't have access to his own money or basic necessities to make his journey back home. And same with Gersies. He was stuck in Ottawa and relied on the generosity of fellow Canadians and fellow protesters, the same ones that were painted to be far right, white supremacist extremists, to get them out of that, stagnant stuck situation and be able to make their way back home. It wasn't any thanks to the government that seized their assets for an unknown amount of time and left them stranded in the dead of winter with no food, no shelter, and no way to access their funds to put gas in their vehicles to get out of there. It's absolute madness. And again, it's just pointing to the history of the Liberals and an inability to think rationally about the measures that they're taking and what the actual consequences of their actions will be. Because each time we see them put forward a piece of legislation or a policy or whatever they're doing, when Parliament isn't at a complete shutdown standstill as it is currently, they don't have the wherewithal to foresee what will actually happen. And the complete ineptitude of this government to have that, it's astonishing and astounding. And you saw that pointed out very clearly in front of a Supreme 3 justices last week. So we'll see how that goes. But I see that I missed a couple of the other Rumble rants.
Did.
Sorry about that. I kind of just rushed ahead there. We have one from Colchester Mike. Gives $10. Love your shows. Short and sweet. Thank you so much. We are so thrilled also to be here, and thanks for supporting our shows, because without all of our lovely supporters, we wouldn't be able to do this work. So thank you. Weebly Pug, Weebly gives $5. Why doesn't Rebel News release viewers' choice results to subscribers? Results were to be released December 20th. Still waiting. This year, I think when Ezra announced the viewers' choice awards, it was only on December 12th. I think we were very behind the ball on that, or maybe, I think he just announced the competition on December 20th. But anyway, we did release them. Where is it here?
3 weeks ago.
Yes.
We released it 3 weeks ago, and it should surprise nobody. So maybe we can put the link in the description of this, just so that it's posted here, if that's doable. Thank you, guys. But if you look on Rebel News Rumble, I think it was 3 weeks ago, 21 days ago, we did post results of the Viewers' Choice Award, and it should surprise nobody that our beloved, and we also announced it on X, January 20th. So 3 weeks ago, January 20th, that it was our beloved David Menzies taken home first. And then Avi Yamini, who is a cheater because he has an entire continent to vote for him, he got second. And then Dre Humphrey, who did launch a bit of a marketing campaign on her own behalf, taken in third. So it's hard. Like Ezra said, it's hard to pick your favorites amongst your children. But for our forward-facing journalists, David Menzies, then Avi the cheater Yamini, and then Dre Humphreys. So those are it. So I don't know how you voted. Let us know in the chat maybe how you voted. Did those go how you thought they would have? I think they did. For me, I think they did. Yeah, that was sort of how I thought it would go. David had a big year this year. We've got an ad read, and then tomorrow I'll let you pick the next story for us to talk about. Still got a half an hour left in the show. So our next message is from our friends at Rumble through 1775coffee.com. So have you heard of the recent advertising scandal? Let me break it down. The CEO of Rumble, Chris Pavlovski, recently released an email from Inspire Brands and Dunkin' Donuts. This sort of shocked me a little bit because of all the companies I thought wouldn't be woke, I thought maybe Dunkin' Donuts would respect its blue-collar coffee roots and realize that there's already a Starbucks. You don't got to be Starbucks. But the email explicitly states the right-wing culture of Rumble is too polarizing. In other words, Dunkin' Donuts has a problem with right-wing culture and wants nothing to do with it or Rumble, or I guess at least 50% of their customers. So here's the solution. Stop buying products that don't support you and start supporting brands that do support you. The competing coffee brand that we all need to get behind is Rumble 1775 Coffee. For a limited time, Rumble is offering buy 2 bags of coffee, get one free. Go to 1775coffee.com, enter promo code Duncan, very cheeky Rumble, to get this limited time deal. That's 1775coffee.com. Okay, I think we're all caught up. Tamara, what are we going to talk about next?
Yeah, well, we mentioned some of the carbon tax nonsense. And so I think this next story is important. It comes out of Global News. Small businesses are still being taxed on the carbon rebate. So the carbon tax is sold currently to Canadians as this like saving grace that, yeah, you pay all these taxes and additional fees and increased costs on everything that you buy in the country, thanks to the Liberals' carbon tax. But it's okay because you will be getting rebates back, and especially for small businesses, they will be getting rebates in return. And it's supposed to, it's sold again to the Canadian public by the Liberals, who don't think about what the repercussions of their policies and implementations are going to be in the real world, not up in their ivory tower dwelling la la land. And so now you're finding that small businesses are actually being taxed on their carbon tax rebates. So they're basically being taxed on tax that's the mental gymnastics again needed here to make sense of this is absolutely absurd. But here it says small businesses across Canada are still being taxed on their carbon tax rebates, despite a commitment from the former finance minister, that's Chrystia Freeland, that they would be tax-free, says the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, CFIB. The business group says it has been informed by the Canada Revenue Agency that the rebate is considered government assistance to taxpayers and that it's subject to income tax. CRA also said that it told former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, the CRA also told it that former Finance Minister said it will be tax-free, but and that the fall economic statement made a similar commitment. But regardless, they're going ahead and taxing businesses on this. And thanks to the prorogation of Parliament, the situation is not being made any easier, said the president and CEO of the CFIB, Dan Kelly, because only new legislation presented in Parliament can override the decision to tax businesses on their carbon tax rebates. This is craziness. And these are small businesses coming out of 4 years of rolling restrictions, rolling lockdowns, mandates, having to take excessive steps to do things like implement very expensive plexiglass barriers, put stickers on the floor to stop the spread of a seasonal respiratory virus, implement hand sanitizing stations at the front doors of all their businesses, implement capacity restrictions, putting little mask boxes and supplying people with masks and sanitizer, and taking all of these measures to try to adhere to government restrictions, stipulations, mitigating the viral spread of COVID-19 in their businesses. And now they're being hit once again by the Liberals with this absolute absurd taxation on a tax that has negatively affected their bottom line and made everything more expensive for everyone. This goes to show the absolute absurdity. I mean, we've talked about it. We just mentioned the freezing of bank accounts and the government's inability to think about the long-term repercussions of what they're doing. And here is once again another case in point of that.
Well, and I like the government's excuse for that. So what they said is, what's the reason here? I'm trying to find it here because I have the CP version, but it should be the same as the Global News version. I think it was the government said that it is government assistance, and so that's why you're getting taxed. It's not a refund, it's on a tax that you paid, right? Because if you got a refund on your taxes, you wouldn't pay taxes on that. They're saying, no, this is government assistance. Well, then perhaps you could stop calling, the rebate is considered government assistance to taxpayers, and therefore it's subject to income tax. Then you should quit calling it a rebate, because the actual definition of a rebate is a refund that a customer receives after purchasing a product or paying for a service. So they changed the name to the carbon tax rebate. And then now once people are like, okay, but you're not treating this like a rebate, they're like, oh, well, that's because it's not a rebate. It's government assistance. So then just call it a government carbon vote buying scheme, because that's what it is.
Well, and the government sold this to Canadians again, and these businesses, as though it was carbon neutral, or sorry, it was revenue neutral. And so we're going to tax you, but it's not actually going to mean anything, because we're going to give it back to you in the form of a rebate, but you'll now also be taxed on whatever you get back in your rebate. One of the final sentences here in the bottom of the article from Dan Kelly, the CEO and president of the CFIB, says, if the government is collecting corporate income tax on the carbon tax rebate checks, well, then it's hardly revenue neutral. And the Canadian Press requested comment from CRA in the office of the Minister of Finance and Intergovernmental Affairs, Dominic LeBlanc, but I'm guessing they didn't hear back because there's no response in here, which is unsurprising.
They're busy campaigning for Carney right now. They're too busy on the campaign trail for Mark Carney. We'll get to that in a second. Now, let's just bump ahead to the fentanyl stuff. So this is from the Bureau. Exclusive how the RCMP, CBSA, and Trudeau government lost the U.S. trust in the fentanyl fight. Could it have something to do with all the super labs we have in this country, and also our government giving fentanyl to people? So several veterans of Canadian law enforcement argue that while President Donald Trump's critiques of Canada's mishandling of fentanyl trafficking and border security are politically charged and often harsh, they underscore an uncomfortable reality. Canada is increasingly perceived as compromised, either incapable or unwilling to confront entrenched transnational criminal networks. American and Canadian sources alike describe a nation whose law enforcement agencies are in disarray, inhibited by suspected infiltration at the highest levels, obstructing investigations into billion-dollar drug networks and money laundering operations. They point to the notorious case of Cameron Ortis, Canada's former top intelligence official who is convicted of leaking Five Eyes signals intelligence to some of the world's most dangerous Iranian state-sponsored criminals. His case, still cloaked in national security secrecy, is believed to have also involved Chinese espionage investigations. But concerned about corruption within Canada's law enforcement and intelligence agencies extend far beyond Ortis himself, according to enforcement experts who spoke on the condition of anonymity due to the sensitivity of this matter. So all that begs the question, or maybe it beggars belief, that we do not have quite yet a fentanyl czar. And that was like the one thing that Trump really wanted us to deal with. It was the one thing Daniel Smith was like, Trump says he wants us to have a fentanyl czar. Let's get one immediately yesterday. And here we are, a week and a bit out from our reprieve from impending tariffs, and we still don't have a fentanyl czar in the way that Trump would like. We've got Doug Ford urging lame duck Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to appoint a fentanyl czar. Are these guys, is their bromance over? Or is it?
And we need the Trudeau government to get on with naming the fentanyl czar. It's been 7 days. It's been a whole week. This can't be the speed we operate at. Prime Minister Trudeau, I'm urging you, name the fentanyl czar today. Name them now. As we stare down the threat of tariffs and growing economic risks from south of the border, risk that will last through the next 4 years. I want to reiterate what I've said before, what I've said from the very beginning. Canada and the United States are the strongest when we work together.
Finally, wanting to work together, be diplomatic. But as you mentioned, Sheila, Canada, the government is one of the largest fentanyl dealers. So why would they want to appoint a czar to mitigate or quell their own dealings? And specifically when it comes to fentanyl, later on in that article, I think just before the end, two paragraphs up, Canada's largest ever money laundering investigation, E-Pirate, was directly linked to Sam Gore, a fact not widely disclosed, according to a Canadian source. The investigation collapsed in late 2019 after a police witness was exposed, resulting in a high-profile failure in federal court. Since then, Sam Gore's leaders have continued to exploit Canada for fentanyl trafficking and money laundering, facing little resistance. E-Pirate uncovered how their operations funneled billions in drug cash through British Columbia government casinos, hundreds of Chinese bank accounts, and vast pools of illicit funds circulating throughout Latin America. This is a scathing report from the Bureau. Just further up, I meant to actually start here. It said, at the center of U.S. government alarm, sources believe is the case of Sam Gore, one of the world's most powerful triad drug trafficking networks with reported links to Chinese Communist Party operatives, according to U.S. government experts such as David Asher. And they said Australia had tried to warn Canada about this threat, about Sam Gore, also known as the company, long before the RCMP recognized it as a major transnational syndicate. You know, and again, this is all just falling on deaf ears. Sam Gore's links Southeast Asian drug networks responsible for trafficking tens of billions of dollars in fentanyl and methamphetamine to global operations involving Latin American cartels and large-scale money laundering. And then it goes on with what I've just read there. As I said, this is a scathing report. And again, it's just been swept under the rug, ignored, and go along to get along by the Liberal government since 2019, at least, at the very least.
Yeah. We've also got Danielle Smith, her tweeting that it's been a full week since U.S. President Donald Trump and the Canadian government reached a border security agreement that included a 30-day window. So we're now 23 days left on that. To demonstrate our nation's commitment to securing our shared border against fentanyl trafficking and illegal migration. Who do you think? And let's keep going. Alberta's perplexed and concerned by the delay in appointing this fentanyl czar and calls on the government to do so without further delay. There's much work to be done. And while efforts to strengthen border security and crack down on fentanyl trafficking have begun across the country, these efforts will have limited effect without a federal lead to coordinate the national response. And she's going, as she said, with her fellow premiers to Washington, D.C. To advocate on behalf of their provinces without the help of the federal government. Now, I'm concerned about who the federal government would choose as their fentanyl czar. I saw a rumor on X, and it's so far just a rumor. I haven't heard anything from anybody in the know. Brenda Lucki, former commissioner of the RCMP, the one who just, every time he turned around, she was hugging Justin Trudeau. I'm also worried that they might choose somebody as incapable as Bill Blair. I'm worried that maybe they might choose somebody like Bonnie Henry when they probably should be choosing somebody like Mike Ellis, the public safety minister here in Alberta, who is a former police officer who has taken like a zero compromise approach on fentanyl trafficking, and couple that with our addictions procedures here in Alberta. We are people who take this seriously, and like they've stepped up because Justin Trudeau's bail reform has failed. We monitor Justin Trudeau's bail releases here in Alberta on our own, expanding the sheriffs to do that. So that would be like my fantasy football pick for who should be the fentanyl czar, but I'm worried we're going to get Bonnie Henry.
Oh, this is a great idea. Can we actually do like a fantasy border czar draft?
Who would you pick?
That'd be really fun to do, but we don't have a federal government, right?
Right.
Justin Trudeau prorogued Parliament, so all parliamentary affairs and business is frozen at a complete standstill. And then he resigned, despite the fact that he's still apparently somehow quasi leading Canada as the lame duck sitting outgoing prime minister. But we don't have who's going to actually appoint this person. Is it going to be Trudeau? Is it going? We don't have a federal government. Nothing's functioning right now on the federal level amid such tumultuous times and relationships with the U.S. This is why the court hearing that's going to be happening this week on the 14th, I believe it's the 13th and 14th, or the 14th and 15th. There's a motion filed by the Canadian Constitutional Center.
CCF Foundation. Yeah.
Foundation. Thank you. To unprorogue Parliament, to get it back up and running.
Justice Center. I think is the lead on that. Yeah.
Justice
Center for Constitutional Freedoms.
With Aris Libranos, I believe it is, and one other named party in there. But so we'll see if they're successful in unproroguing Parliament and getting them back in business, because I have a sneaky suspicion that the only reason why no one has been appointed to be the border czar is because we don't actually have anyone who is, I mean, obviously competent or capable of picking that in the Liberal Party, at least. But there is no federal government as it stands now. As soon as parliamentary business resumes, I suspect there will be a vote of non-confidence, and an election will be triggered, because whoever comes into Trudeau's role as his successor will not have been elected by anyone in Canada to lead the country. And as it stands, pre-prorogation of Parliament, there was two fringe minority parties banded together to form an unofficial coalition, an unofficial majority government, thereby skirting and undermining democracy anyway. So every which way you look at it, it's a mess, and Canada's in shambles as a result, more than it already was prior to the new year of 2025.
Let's move ahead from the tariffs and the border czar stuff just for a second, because I want to touch on, and we've got 50 minutes left in the show, and I want to touch on some of the good work that our new journalist in the UK is doing, Sammy Woodhouse. So British farmers are revolting in the UK against the government right now. The government is imposing an estate tax on farmers, which will basically make it impossible for them to maintain their family farms within their families, because if you give it to your kids and the kids can't pay the estate tax, guess what you have to do? You have to sell the farm. And then a developer swoops in. And so this is being imposed by the Labour government. Sammy's there right now. I'll just read an excerpt from her article. It says, many farmers are claiming that the new tax policy, which removes the tax exemption on agricultural assets for farms valued over £1 million, and if you know anything about the property tax values in the UK, that's not a big family farm, will force them to sell their land or be crippled financially. So the protest that she's at is called Save British Farming Tractor Rally, and dozens of tractors. This is gorgeous to me because we did this in Edmonton during the Freedom Convoy. It's the Save British Farming Tractor Rally, and they've descended on downtown London to block the streets of Westminster. It's beautiful to me to see.
We have a clip here
there
too of Sammy. We could maybe just play, I think it's just a 40-second one where she's kind of introducing the scene and you can see all the tractors in the back. It looks really fun. Maybe we should just play that one.
It's a cold and wet Monday afternoon here in Westminster, but I'm reporting here today in London for the Save the British Farmers protest. Now, there's thousands expected to arrive here in London today to support our British farmers. But why? Well, because they're against the farmers' inheritance tax. Now, stay tuned throughout the day because I'll be bringing you all the updates and find out exactly why it's so important to support our British farmers. And of course, you can head over to protectsammy.co.uk to support all my journalism. I'm Sammy Woodhouse reporting with Rebel News.
Yeah, she's doing a great job over there. And it looks like the postings on X are doing really well too, having good reach, because otherwise people don't know the mainstream media is silent on these sorts of things and giving a voice to the little guy. And so otherwise you don't know that these things are happening globally. And in solidarity, to a lot of the things and the same sort of policies that are happening here in North America as well. And I think that as you see this magnitude of protests and the use of heavy equipment, it really leans and lends from the Freedom Convoy that we had here in 2022. The absolute ingenuity of that protest to assemble in a grassroots manner and bring their big rigs in such a way that they could affect real change and get the government to pay attention was something that we had never seen before. And now you're seeing it happen all over the world in the same manner.
Just so people understand what we're dealing with here as farmers, as agricultural producers, £1 million is not very much money when you're thinking about even a small farming operation that usually won't even cover the cost of the land. But, when you're like one piece of farming equipment, let's say a combine, anywhere from $100,000 to $800,000 just for one piece of farming equipment. So you have generationally built up. I mean, I'm looking at these tractors, $100,000, $200,000, $250,000. For me, when I looked at the Convoy, the border blockade in Coots, I was like, wow, look at all the money and farming equipment that's there. And so when and there's a little, what is it? International case IH right there, little old guy. But there's a lot of money tied up in farm equipment. Farmers are like cash poor and equipment and land rich, and that doesn't really mean anything to the grocery store. And the Liberals are doing something very similar here in Canada with their capital gains tax, which they've sort of backed off on, but not really. Because if you've structured your family farm as a corporation and you want to then give that company to your child, and you've done that for tax purposes or whatever, whatever, then now when you transfer your company to your child, you're getting hit with something very similar in the form of capital gains tax, which is just an inheritance tax at the end of the day. And then everybody wonders, where did all the family farms go? Why does Bill Gates own all this land? Why is he growing biofuels instead of food? It starts here.
Yeah, well, and the CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency, is attempting to collect this capital gains tax at the new inclusion rate without any sort of legislated oversight, because again, Parliament was prorogued when this bill was as this bill was being proposed and put through the usual checks and balances of Parliament. And they decided, hey, oh, well, Parliament was prorogued, but we're still going to, full steam ahead for us and our tax grab with the capital gains tax. And just ignored the fact that all parliamentary business is supposed to freeze and be at a standstill and not continue until Parliament is back and resuming. And so I think there was it the Taxpayers Federation that launched a court challenge against them, and then immediately they backpedaled without actually mentioning that court case. So that's funny. But this is the exact same sort of thing that's happening over where Sammy is and covering these British farmers. And, it's the globalist agenda. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. And this is exactly how they're going ahead to implement and institute these disturbing policies and transfer more wealth to the top of the top and leave the little guy stranded and eating the bugs. So
I was going to say, you know what you don't need to have a bug farm? Lots of land and tractors. And so, you know, once you
Just
figure
have
out
an
why beef
aquarium.
is so, yeah, exactly. Once you figure out why beef is so expensive and you've got to eat like a lizard, this is exactly where it starts. You chase the people off their land. The land is then developed for other things, and then food is too expensive, and then all of a sudden you're having your cricket puree in the morning and your Soylent Green.
Gotta love
I
those
mean,
alternative proteins.
yeah, that's right. People are alternative proteins. If you've watched enough science fiction, as I have, we've got. Speaking of science fiction, transgender liberal advisor denies biological males have advantages in female sports. We're going to have to do a little bit of a word dance here to make sure that we can
Yes.
stay on YouTube. But this is from the Western Standard. Transgender liberal advisor denying that males have an advantage in sports. Nathaniel Morin ran as a liberal candidate for MP in Quebec in 2021. So he had his nomination papers signed. Dang it. I think I just got us kicked off of YouTube. Nathaniel had nomination papers signed.
Is it Nathaniel? Nathaniel?
Nathaniel.
Yeah.
Yeah. He just changed a
Nathaniel.
couple of letters.
Added the L at the end there.
And this person, geez, dominated a women's 5K race. Nathaniel advises Liberal MP Marcy Ian, Minister of Women, Gender, Equality and Youth. In a Wednesday post to X, Morin objected to Trump's executive order to ban biological males from competing in women's and girls' sports in the United States. Nathaniel posted, under the Trump administration, we will defend the proud tradition of female athletes, and we will not allow men to beat up and injure and cheat our women and girls. Okay, so that's what Trump posted. Morin posted that this was tantamount to exclusion, discrimination, and promoting hate.
Of course.
And since then, Morin has, of course, made Nathaniel's X account private, so we can't really see, but it says that trans athletes are not a threat. Transphobia is. Anyway, Jonathan Kay replied online pointing out that Morin makes $140,000 a year and is a biologically failed liberal candidate who wins 5-kilometer road races in the female category. So this is personal for Nathaniel.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't get over the name.
Oh, wait, it gets better. You know who Nathaniel? I'll say that Nathaniel, February 4th, 2024, ran a time of 25:32 in the female 30 to 39 category, blowing away the second place Maud Bisson, who ran the race 6 minutes slower at 31:16. Morin's time won the fastest female across all age categories. Otherwise, Cersei, I think that's how you say it, Hugenrad, a girl in the 10 to 12 age category. Oh my God. These
that's sad.
Athletes beating the 13-year-old girls. It drives me crazy. She ran 26:08, and she would have won the award. Anyway,
40 seconds in that kind of a race is
That's so
actually
fast.
huge.
That's so
That
fast.
is huge. This isn't, a margin of a few seconds here or there. That is a large, a major difference that clearly shows and proves the biological advantage of someone who's born a biological male.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't dead name anybody by saying Nathaniel as articulately as I possibly could. We've got this video from Polyev in the frigid, frozen north of Iqaluit today. He slams Mark Carney and the Trudeau Liberals for calling to ban rifles. And it's true. It's not just a tool of survival in the north. It's a tool of subsistence harvesting. You can't afford to eat up there if you're not killing something, thanks to the carbon tax. So,
well, and
let's
the
watch.
Liberals claim to be all about truth and reconciliation, and who they're harming the most with these bans up in the far north are the indigenous populations and those who rely on hunting and gathering and their traditional modes of doing that, of gathering their food, and hindering their ability to continue on with their ancestry and the way that they traditionally went about eating,
right,
surviving.
Finally, hunting rifles. The Carney Trudeau Liberals have said they want to ban hunting rifles. That would be a lethal decision in northern communities. It's hard for people in the south to understand this, but hunting is not a hobby in the north. It is actually a survival. There are many families for whom the majority of protein calories actually come from hunting and fishing. You ban hunting rifles, as the Trudeau Carney Liberals have tried to do, you starve families. So I will reject the radical Trudeau Carney policy of banning hunting rifles. Under common sense conservatives, people in the north, people everywhere in Canada can know with certainty you will keep your hunting rifles. We will lock down the borders against gun smugglers and gangsters. We will go after the real criminals, not the indigenous hunters, the farmers, and the patriotic Canadians that we love so much. Thank you very much. Let's bring it home for Canada.
Let's hope that he sticks to what he's campaigning on here and what we've heard today, as Poilievre finds his conservative backbone and sticks to it.
You know, in fairness, I think he has always been very conservative. He just didn't have the ability to say as much. Because remember, after he axe murdered Carney in committee in 2021, I think it was O'Toole at the time, just basically pulled him off committees and muzzled him. And I think it was because the sun could only shine on one. And he was outshining the current leader at the time. I know, like, if you go back to his writings and his essays from, like, my dog's got to quit bumping into my tripod. But if you go back to his writings and his essays from, like, his early 20s, late 20s, very conservative. I don't think he's saying much different. It's just that I hope he sticks with it now at this point, because all the forces of the universe are working to pull him left, the culture, the media, the Liberals. And so hopefully that he just stays the course and stays just saying the conservative things that matter to conservatives.
Yeah, I wonder if we actually have that clip. That would be a fun one to end off the stream on. I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was 2 or 3 minutes. So it was a bit of a longer one, but yeah, he just destroys Carney. And again, those mental gymnastics that the Liberals like to resort back to, Pierre Poilievre he's not standing for it. And he just keeps peppering and reiterating and re-asking. And so that relentlessness is really what's needed to deal with people who do these sorts of things and just dance around subjects and vomit out their word salad instead of tangibly responding to a pointed, clear, easy, even yes or no question.
Yeah. And maybe we can show it as we sign off after we got through the other stuff. We showed the other one where Poilievre went after him for building pipelines. I think it was Brazil and UAE, but being against the Northern Gateway on the stream the other day. But there's one where he points out that, like, look, the preferred solar panel of choice for Brookfield's green schemes uses slave labor in China. And so all of that sort of dovetails in nicely with Chrystia Freeland, who's getting attacked on WeChat by the commies who are organizing against her campaign. And I'm thinking, Freeland, look, you guys were in government. You had an opportunity to do something about WeChat. For several years, you did not, because WeChat was only going after Kenny Chu and Michael Chong at the time, instead of you guys. Now you got to dance with the one that brought you, as Shania Twain sang, I think in 1993. So Carney is clearly China's man, and he was unable to call what the treatment of the Uyghurs a genocide in that clip. Like, it was just so gross, but so, like, perfectly liberal, chef's kiss liberal. Let's go to before we go, let's go to a couple of underreported stories in the world. Church vandalism. let's go to that one. From Radio Genoa, this is someone breaking into the Vatican and devastating what he finds in, oh my gosh, St. Peter's Basilica. Can we show that?
That architecture.
The altar of St. Peter's Basilica, the tomb of St. Peter, our first pope, it is under that altar that they're standing on, destroying. Like, that is one of the most important places in all of Christendom, whether you're a Catholic or some other denomination. That is a Catholic church, but St. Peter is important to all Christians, and they are literally stomping on his grave right there. And so now that's happening in the Vatican. How did these people get there? But we also, I just put it in the chat, an attempted knife attack in Holy Ghost Church in Winnipeg over the weekend. This comes to us by way of our friends at Just Bins, the garbage company that has a side hustle doing the news because they get around the Facebook ban by being a garbage company. And they are an actual garbage company in Regina. But this is Holy Ghost Church in Winnipeg. Someone tried to stab the priest during Mass. And anyways, just, this is hideous.
Before we show this, are we allowed to on YouTube? I don't know. We might go.
Oh.
I haven't seen the full clip, but if there's any.
I have seen some of it. So he attacks the pastor, attempts to stab him with an object in his right hand. So I think we'll be okay. The pastor then runs away. Pastor, it's a priest, but that's okay.
To ty na mnie spojrzał. Uważaj! Uważaj! Hej! You're under arrest. You're under arrest. You have the right to feel escorted. Let's go. Let's go.
So the police followed him in there.
Wow.
That's crazy. We've got priests, attempted stabbings of priests in Winnipeg. Like,
just a godless world.
Added to the church burnings, I guess. Okay, I think
Trudeau will probably get up there and say, "Oh, I can understand why.
I can sympathize. I can sympathize." Now that might not be religiously motivated, although I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who ran into a church to try to stab a priest who isn't politically motivated through hate and Christophobia, as the word actually is. But if somebody tried to stab an imam, the world would stop. We'd have special legislation. But this is just what it's like to be a Christian in Canada right now.
Maybe we should end on just Ezra's tweet here, since we've talked about DOGE and the Department of Government Efficiency and Accountability. Ezra tweeted Elon Musk, who is leading the DOGE department. Why did the U.S. Air Force pay $750,000 to NewsGuard, a censorship company that downranks conservative news sites? How is that related to the Air Force's mandate? And why did it only attack pro-Trump or pandemic skeptic news? And then the source is hyperlinked there. With
that's wild.
The amounts. The awarding agency, the Department of Defense. This is just craziness. And I think that Elon did end up retweeting this. I don't have that one
He said, sorry, if you scroll down, this is clearly a waste of money and a freedom of speech violation. That's from Elon. And then if you, I think it was Dave Rubin responded saying that he pointed out on his show something about NewsGuard, and then like days later, NewsGuard went after him, weaponized with American government money. So
with the taxpayer dollars to work against them and perpetuate the PSYOP.
Yeah.
The COVID illusion of consensus, as it's been coined, which was just a psychological operation to ensure your compliance. Thank you, public health overlords. Maybe that's not YouTube safe.
I think it is now, but it would have definitely got you censored 2 years ago.
Yes.
So, welcome to the new rules.
They have loosened the noose, but I mean, that's only for who knows how long. And the thing about the community guidelines that gets me is it's so ambiguously worded, right? Like, just like all of these horrible pieces of legislation and policies and things that the Liberals put forward, they are so loosely and ambiguously worded that you could interpret it any which way. And so a lot of these things that are implemented are open to the interpretation of the person reading it, and it's not clear, it's not cut and dry, and that's intentional. And so you're not really sure if you're going to say something that's going to get you canceled, but the censors have this to fall back on and can just apply it any which way they so please. So it's strange, and that's why we like to kind of migrate you over to Rumble, because we don't have to worry about those sorts of things there.
Yeah, there's stuff that we just outright can't even publish on YouTube, even though it is accurate and completely legally bulletproof, just because of YouTube's aversion to the truth. We just can't publish it there. You know what? I think, wow, we've done 1 hour and 38 minutes. I think we're done, unless we have any chats to read. Okay, perfect.
I think that's it.
Okay, Tamara, I'll let you wrap it up.
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. Let us know how you're liking our 1.5-hour daily live streams. Again, if there's something you'd like to see specifically or hear more of or less of, probably you'd like to hear less of breathless Justin Trudeau. Or even if you have any recommendations, special guests or people you'd like to hear from that we could bring on maybe for 15, 30-minute increments, we're open to your suggestions, because without you, our viewers, we wouldn't be here and able to do this work. So thanks to everybody who watched, supported us. Thanks for all of your chats. Next time, don't forget to share the link out to some of your friends, expand our reach a little bit. And thanks to all of our staff and colleagues behind the scenes who make sure that the stream runs smoothly and that all the links are clickable and you have access to them on all the platforms, because it's Sheila and I up front, but there are so many people behind us making sure that we can bring you this important work and this stream today. Check us out same time and place tomorrow, preferably on Rumble or X, and try to hold on to your critical thinking caps in the meantime, because the government is out to get them. Thanks so much, everybody. See you next time.
I've been speaking to a lot of Canadians about how they feel about what Donald Trump's doing. Of course, there's worry, but now Canadians are pissed off. They feel insulted. You know, we were good neighbors. We worked together to build a good economy, and Donald Trump has insulted us. People feel offended at this idea of the 51st state. So Canadians on their own are already taking action. They're saying, we're going to buy Canadian, we're going to boycott American. And I want to acknowledge all the Canadians making that decision. Thank you for doing that. It's the right thing to do. We also want to punch back against those that are taking shots at our sovereignty. We know that the billionaire buddy of Donald Trump, Elon Musk, is a driving force behind the 51st state. So let's punch back against him. I should also mention he's not only the billionaire buddy of Donald Trump, he's also the billionaire buddy of Pierre Poilievre here in Canada. We want to pick a fight with this guy because we want to take him on. I'm not going to stand back while he takes shots at our country. So our move now is we want to put 100% tariff on Tesla cars. You pick a fight with Canada, we're going to fight back. We're going to make sure Donald Trump and Elon Musk feel it.